Oh, this is definitely a story that I wanted to get into and cover today. So apparently, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or a rumor or what have you, that all the U.S. presidents are related. Interesting. Interesting. So if you're new to the live, welcome. My name is Randall. This is the McClures. We react to review, we make fun of, we laugh at stuff. Links are in the description if you want to support the channel. We do rely on you guys to keep making content. ShopMcClures.com is a great way to do it. Made in America products, buy car soap, buy makeup, all the stuff's made in America. Boots, jackets, holsters. I just try to find stuff made in America to help support the country. If you guys buy it there, helps me out. We'd appreciate it. ShopMcClures.com. But yeah, we're going to get into this story. Are all the U.S. presidents related? Interesting stuff. I'm not sure which order. I got a couple videos to watch on it. I'm not sure which video to watch first. But this is the video that I seen on either TikTok or Instagram or somewhere like that that got me interested and had me look into it. So we'll watch this one first.
Folks, will you chip into my campaign today?
No,
we made a lot of
we
progress.
won't, you fucking piece of shit. We definitely won't.
On the School Watch tonight, the story of a 7th grader from Salinas who claims to have made a major discovery about President Obama. She and her grandfather say that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president. We get more tonight from Action News reporter Felix Cortez, who's live in our Salinas newsroom.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent...
We obviously haven't confirmed this, but according to the video that I watched on Instagram, the one president in history that's not related was Reagan. What did Reagan do? Went completely against the mainstream foreign policy narrative. Who's the other president not related? Trump. Guess what he does? Also goes against the foreign policy narrative. Seems to be a pattern.
The summer, really all summer, tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
Well, first we start off with George Washington at the top, and then it goes to John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
11-year-old Bridget Dovigneau says she's made a first-of-its-kind discovery that President Obama and all the presidents before him, with the exception of one, are related and descendants of a former king of England.
No, they are all cousins,
I
and
see.
they're grandsons of John Lackland.
Dovigneau says she spent countless hours on the internet over the summer researching the lineage of our presidents, a project that started with her trying to trace her own family tree.
But I'm the first historian to do all the presidents. I'm very glad I got this done, and I think it will turn out to be a success.
The Monte Vista
You're
Christian
impressive.
7th grader has written President Obama
That girl is
to tell
impressive.
him the presidents before him are his cousins. She hopes to present this family tree chart personally to the president. But Bridget has her skeptics, including this reporter. Her biggest supporter and firm believer that Obama is a descendant of a former king of England is no doubt her mother.
If you have a child, and they 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 have a child,
Like names change.
all she's saying is this guy is the great, 25th, 27th, depending on what line it is. He created all this family. So do I believe it? Yes. It's hard,
Wow.
but it's true.
That's interesting.
Well, Mom said it. Hard to believe, but you got to give the little girl an A+ for at least trying to do that and trying to accomplish that feat. And by the way, Bridget has concluded she's the 11th cousin of President Obama. Dan, Aaron.
All right, very good. Thank you, Felix. So who is the one that President Barack Obama is not related to, according to the 7th grader? Martin Van Buren, 8th President of the United States, first U.S. president born in the
Thought it was
U.S.
Reagan.
Van Buren was a widowed farmer and tavern keeper from New York who helped form the Democratic Party. Served one term as president. His ancestry is Dutch, and according to the Salinas 7th grader, all of the other presidents are of English ancestry.
Very,
Volkswagen
very
Jobs.
interesting
German
stuff.
engineering everyone can get into.
Very, very interesting. So have you guys ever heard
On
that
the School
before?
Watch
Did you
tonight,
guys
the story
hear
of a
that
seventh
back
grader
in the
from
day when the story came out? Because obviously this is an old news report from back in the day. I have never heard of this. I have never heard of this. So we got a couple other videos that are going to dive into this further. And I'm curious. This one's got more views, so we're going to go with it. It's going to be the winner.
Hi, this is Matt Baker. This coming Monday is President's Day in the US, and therefore I thought it would be a good time to address the question, are all the US presidents related? You see, back in 2009, a young girl by the name of Brigianne Davignon made the news for having discovered that every single US president, except one, is the direct descendant of King John of England. Ever since then, whenever people come across this fact, they assume that something extraordinary must be at work. Some people even start wondering about whether there really are secret societies that control the world, or ancient bloodlines that continue to hold on to power. Well, here's the thing. The answer to the question, are all the US presidents related, is in fact yes. However, the problem is that we should actually be asking a different question. What we should be asking is, are all the US presidents more closely related to each other than any other random group of natural-born Americans would be? Because the answer to that question is no. For example, 2 weeks ago on this channel, I demonstrated how Mr. Beat and I are actually 11th cousins, even though he's an American and I'm a Canadian. This is because if we go back far enough, everyone in the world is related to each other, somehow. And you usually don't have to go back as far as you might think. Today's video is actually a 3-part collaboration between Genie Vlogger, Mr. Beat, and Useful Charts. In Genie Vlogger's video, he's going to explain why it is that most of us are more closely related than you think. In Mr. Beat's video, he's going to talk about some of the US presidents who are in fact quite closely related. And in this video, well, I of course am going to show you a family tree chart, one that includes 20 US presidents. And I'm going to show you the closest connections that I could find between those 20.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right, so just the opening to that video basically breaks down the fact that when you do a genealogy family tree, we're all related at some point. So to tie all the presidents together is impressive as far as the research goes, but it's not unique as far as there's some sort of, through line or some tangible reason they were selected to be president because they're of the same bloodline. Although Obama was definitely selected and groomed to be president from a very young age. We all know that. We all know that. And because I know that, that's actually what sparked my interest in this topic in the first place. So, the curiosity is piqued.
Okay, I'm going to start off with Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the United States. Remember how Brigianne Davignon's chart included every president except one? Well, some people assume that that one missing person was Obama, but it was actually Martin Van Buren. Van Buren was the first person of Dutch descent, as opposed to British descent, to serve as president. But just because he's not a descendant of King John of England, it does not mean that he's not related to other presidents. This is because most of the later presidents have mixed ancestry, just like most Americans today. For example, the 2 Roosevelts had Dutch, British, and French ancestors. You can see here that Martin Van Buren had a 3rd cousin who was the great-grandmother of Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th US president. This means that Teddy Roosevelt actually has a closer blood relationship to Van Buren than he does to Franklin Roosevelt. Of course, the 2 Roosevelts are also related, but not as closely as you might think. You have to go back 6 generations to find the Roosevelt ancestor that Teddy and Franklin share in common. That man was Nicholas Roosevelt. Teddy descends from his son Johannes, whereas Franklin descends from his son Jacob. This makes the two Roosevelt presidents 5th cousins. Another thing you might not have been aware of is that Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin Roosevelt, was also a Roosevelt. Not just by marriage, but by birth. She was actually Teddy Roosevelt's niece. So the two presidents actually share a closer relationship through marriage than they do through blood. Franklin Roosevelt was
creepy.
the 32nd president, and he is often remembered by his initials FDR. Well, the D stands for Delano, which was his mother's maiden name. The Delano family descends from a man named Philip Delano, who arrived in New England just 1 year after the Mayflower, and he's actually the ancestor of 3 American presidents. In addition to FDR, he's also the direct ancestor of Ulysses Grant, the 18th president.
That's something crazy to think of, though. That one guy, Delano, a year after people found America, was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go over there. So he makes the move. He goes over there. Because he made that decision, we got 3 U.S. presidents out of it. That's crazy. History is crazy.
And Calvin Coolidge, the 30th president. So that makes FDR and Ulysses Grant 4th cousins once removed, and FDR and Coolidge 6th cousins twice removed. Now, before we go on, a lot of people get confused by the whole once removed, twice removed terminology. So let me quickly explain. If 2 people share the same parents, they are siblings. If they both have a kid, those kids are first cousins. The next generation down would be second cousins, and then third cousins, and so on. However, when we're comparing the relationship between 2 people in different generations, we use the term removed to refer to how big the difference is. So, for example, if we want to describe the relationship between this person and this person, we'd say that they are first cousins once removed. If you kept going down, you'd get twice removed, 3 times removed, and so forth. Okay, so back to the presidents. You can see here that FDR had a great-great-grandmother named Elizabeth Cushman, and she was the direct descendant of Isaac Allerton, one of the 51 surviving passengers of the Mayflower. The Mayflower being the first English boat to arrive in what would become New England. That was way back in the year 1620. Several U.S. presidents are Mayflower descendants, as are many Americans in general. For example, Zachary Taylor was also a descendant of Isaac Allerton, whereas the 2 Bushes descend from Mayflower passenger John Howland. FDR actually descends from a second Mayflower passenger, Richard Warren, as did Ulysses Grant. And Coolidge and the 2 Adams descend from Mayflower passenger John Alden. Speaking of the Bushes and the Adams, these are the only 2 cases of father-son presidents. John Adams, who was president just after George Washington, was one of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. At the time he signed it, his son, John Quincy Adams, was only 8 years old. But several decades later, John Quincy would go on to serve as the country's 6th president. The Bushes, of course, both served as president much more recently. George H.W. Bush being the 41st president, and his son George W. Bush being the 43rd. In addition to the 2 sets of father-son presidents, there was also a case of grandfather-grandson presidents. That was William Harrison, the 9th president, and Benjamin Harrison, the 23rd president. William Harrison is notable in that he died a mere 31 days after his inauguration, making his presidency the shortest of all time. Let's now look at James Madison, the 4th president, James Polk, the 11th president, and Zachary Taylor, the 12th president. Other than the presidents who share a last name, these 3 are the most closely related. This is because they all descend from this man here, James Taylor Jr. This makes Taylor and Madison second cousins, and Polk their second cousin once removed. I'd also like to point out that Taylor's daughter Sarah was the first wife of Jefferson Davis, who, after Sarah's death, went on to serve as the first and only president of the Confederate States of America, the group of breakaway states in the South that ended up losing the Civil War. The Taylor family also connects to two additional presidents. James Taylor Jr. had a brother named John. If we follow his line 6 generations down, we come to First Lady Claudia Taylor, better known as Lady Bird Johnson, wife of the 36th president, Lyndon B. Johnson. But the Taylors also have a connection to one of the most famous presidents of all time, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president. If we go up 2 generations from James Taylor Jr., we get to the family patriarch, John Taylor, who was one of the earliest settlers in Virginia. If we follow his son Thomas's line down 6 generations, we come to Nancy Hanks, the mother of Abraham Lincoln. So that's Lincoln's maternal side. On his father's side, Abraham Lincoln is related to the Harrisons. You can see here that the Harrison family starts with 2 brothers, Thomas and Benjamin, both of whom were, like John Taylor, early settlers in Virginia. Lincoln descends from Thomas, whereas the 2 Harrison presidents descend from Benjamin. I'd also like to point out William Harrison's father, Benjamin Harris V. He too is an important figure in U.S. history, being that he was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and hence a founding father. His mother was Anne Carter, and through her, the Harrisons are connected to 2 more famous Virginia families, the Carters and the Washingtons. Anne Carter and Jimmy Carter are in fact related, but the connection is pretty distant, so I haven't shown it on the chart. Instead, I've shown her connection to the Washingtons. Anne Carter's great-great-grandmother was Anne Washington, the sister of Lawrence Washington. Both Anne Washington's daughter Phyllis and Lawrence Washington's son John immigrated to Virginia. John was the great-grandfather of the very first president of the United States, George Washington. Okay, there's a few more connections I want to show you.
Crazy.
Earlier, I mentioned Lyndon Johnson. Well, Lyndon Johnson is actually Obama's closest presidential relative. Both of them descend from a revolutionary soldier named Philip Ament, making them 4th cousins 3 times removed. Finally, there's Richard Nixon. He descends from Henry Howland, the brother of Mayflower passenger John Howland. But the president he's most connected to is actually by marriage, not by blood. In 1968, just after he was elected the 37th.
Why is there no Nixon chain though? They don't have anybody above Nixon.
1968, just after he was elected the 37th. In he's most connected to.
Look, the line just goes all the way down. They don't have a lineage at all. And then it just goes straight down to Nixon. You don't know who Nixon's parents are or grandparents? I don't understand.
Is actually by marriage, not by blood. In 1968, just after he was elected the 37th president, his daughter Julie married David Eisenhower, the grandson of the 34th president, Dwight Eisenhower. Ever hear of a place called Camp David? It's a retreat near Washington that U.S. presidents have been using since the 1930s. Well, it received its current name from President Eisenhower, who in 1953 decided to change the name to Camp David to honor both his father and his grandson, both of whom were named David. At the time, the younger David was only 5 years old. Okay, so that was a look at some of the closest genealogical connections between U.S. presidents. If you think there's something that I missed, be sure to tell me in the comments. And be sure to check out the other President's Day videos by the Genie Vlogger and Mr. Beat. I'll leave links to those on screen and in the description. Thanks for watching.
I want to see the video of the guy. No, I don't actually. So, who's most closely related to one another? All right. So, the Instagram video is definitely more interesting than the truth. Basically, the truth is we're all related somehow or another. Interesting. Now, this other president, or this other video, shows how they're all descendants of one king. That's kind of interesting. But I think they're showing the connections also through the mother's line. And I don't think that's how... I don't think that's how you do it. I don't know. Interesting stuff, though. Interesting stuff. Tell me what you guys think about this situation. Links in the description if you want to help support. If you're on the live, we're going to keep going and jump into another topic. If you watch this as a video, we do appreciate it. You can shop McClures.com. That's the website. Buy some car soap. Buy a backpack. Buy some boots. Buy something. We appreciate it. Later, bye.